Mr. Brookhart.
Here.
Mrs. Cooper. Dr. Gatachu. Dr. Green.
Here.
Mr. Reichard.
Here.
Mr. Huron.
Here.
Mr. Vognetz. Mr. Clauser.
Here. Go to commercial break. It's not me. It's the equipment.
Okay, floor's open for public comment for agenda items. We're going to skip to item 7 on the agenda.
I'm going to introduce FFA teacher Mike Schultz and some of his students who are going to talk to you about an honor and a trip that they have planned. Mr. Schultz.
Hello, my name is Bella Moore with the Danville FFA.
My name is Caitlin Clements in the Danville FFA.
My name is Amanda Rapp. I'm from the Danville FFA.
And we are here to talk about our trip to our national convention, which will be in October. This year, we competed at our state convention in June for horse evaluation, which is a competition where we will judge a horse by its anatomy and making it, or talking about how balanced the horse is, how athletic it is, and giving reasons of why we placed the animal the way that we did in a class.
The last week of October, we'll be going to nationals in Indianapolis, Indiana.
We will be going there, and it's about 3 to 4 days, and we will be competing, and we will be going out and seeing those like those concerts, the rodeos, and it's just gonna be a lot of fun for all of us to go out, and it'll be like once in a lifetime opportunity for us to go.
The horse judging will also help us in our future if we want to pursue in horses and finding that nice athletic horse for us to show and to ride in the future.
We would like to thank you for this opportunity from letting us come and speak about why we would like to go on this trip, because again, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for us, and we just wanted to thank you.
So guys, you represented Danville area at the state competition, correct? How'd you do?
We got first.
Yeah, there you go. There it was. Congratulations. And the approval of that will be on your agenda next Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
We get a presentation from the school principals.
Want to give each an opportunity to report on the start of school, first day of school today. So let's start with Mrs. Willoughby.
that. Okay, so our first day of school was actually quite uneventful, which if you are at a primary school, that is a good thing. We had all children arrive safely by 8:25. Both parent drop-off and busing was very thorough, and everybody arrived on time. Students were in classrooms by about 8:40, so they went through breakfast lines, and everyone found their classrooms efficiently. The day was lovely, lunches went very well, and all students were out of the building by 3:40, which is pretty awesome. Last year it was almost 3:50, so we have gained some time this year, so we're very proud of that. We're welcoming some co-op students this week from the high school, and we also will welcome our student teachers this week.
Mr. Gump's wife has a birthday today, so he asked for off. I let him have off, but I can tell you I was out at Liberty Valley today and everything went smoothly. Building's in great shape. Mr. Burkich is going to give you a report in a few minutes. Building's in really good shape, and things were flawless at Liberty Valley today. So, Mr. Snover.
Thank you. At the middle school, things went actually really, really well for the first day. I would like to, of course, thank the board for providing us with a fantastic new parking lot that all the parents got to drive in on as they dropped off their students this morning. The parking lot looks incredible. If any of you haven't seen it, please come over, drive around on it a little bit. It's really amazing. We had an extremely high number of parent drop-offs this morning, that first day of school, combined with a little bit of rain, backed us up a little bit at the beginning of the day. Usually by the second or third day, that really evens out. We still had all the students within the building within about a minute or two after our designated start time of 8:05. The day went very smoothly. Of course, a big part of the first day of middle school year is helping our new sixth graders acclimate to what middle school and secondary education's like. Miss Knoll and I and the teachers really spent a lot of the day working with the sixth graders, getting them familiar with the school, the procedures, and how to kind of navigate their day. We spent a lot of time opening lockers for them, helping them figure out how to get to band and chorus and all those other classes that they have no idea where to find. But usually by Thursday or Friday of this first week, they're going to be in great shape. The day went very, very smoothly. I have absolutely no concerns, no reservations, no complaints about how we went at the middle school on our first day. Ms. Knoll, any? The amount of compliments that we've gotten on the parking lot since last week's open house, I can't even count that. So again, thank you for providing that for us.
All right, good evening at the high school. Mrs. Willoughby said the primary school is uneventful the first day. If the high school is as well, then that's a good thing, and it was uneventful at the high school. So she also mentioned our cooperative education students. So we've had students who have been out at co-ops now for weeks. Some students who are coming in after a few periods working at Geisinger, working at rehabilitation places at the elementary school. So that's something that's been going on for weeks here. And some of those students, again, are kind of had a head start into their cooperative education the last few weeks. But again, it was great to see students back in the building. A lot of positive comments about starting after Labor Day. Students and faculty alike both appreciated the extra time. But again, the high school is in great shape. Our students happy to be back. It's amazing how kids grow when you see them come in as ninth graders to the end of ninth grade. And then ninth graders, when they become 10th graders, again, how quickly they grow. And if you follow on Facebook, anybody who posts those yearly photos across, with their first day of school, it's amazing at the high school level to see kids sometimes grow 4, 5, 6 inches in a summer. So great to see them all back. No issues at the high school. So again, thank you to everyone. Anything, Bobby? Thank you.
So, Mr. Wynn, could you hand that to Mr. Burkich, please, so he can fill us in on where we are with facilities?
Okay, at primary school,
we're going to have probably a week, two at the most. We have 2 units that need replaced here. We're still suffering the supply chain issues that we have. Liberty Valley, the fire alarm system being completed tomorrow, except for 2 sub-panels that they're waiting on. The electrician will wrap up by the end of this week. Once again, supply chain issues. The week of the 19th, we'll start with the HVAC installation. It's going to be 4 classrooms at a time, worked out with Mr. Gump. It will be a total of 9 phases, and we'll see how quickly that comes. As of yet, we still, the material is supposed to ship today, but there's no confirmation, so it may be a little bit. Next meeting, you'll have the pay apps and things catching up pretty quickly here at the end of the summer. 3 of the contractors are completely finished. So that's it. We open for school on time.
Finance and budget. Mr. Flies, report on the current financial status of the district.
So before I begin, I do want to introduce to my right Wendy Bartholomew, your new business administrator, officially started today, first day. So say hello to Ms. Bartholomew. So I have for you a financial presentation. Some of you have been asking me to put some fresh eyes on your financial situation. And of course, I like to take the opportunity that you've given me, the time you've given me, to take a look at some things and offer some perspectives that may be helpful to you as you move forward. This is an interesting time to do this because, and I'll try to point this out as I go, to some respects it's a little early to do something like this. And the reason is the budget you are currently in, meaning the 22-23 budget, of course you just passed it, you've just started spending it, and you really don't have any idea how it will play out. But that is also true of the budget that just ended. The 21-22 budget has not yet been finalized in terms of an auditor doing the final adjustments. We should know pretty much where we are in another month or 2, 6 weeks or so. But I'll try to point out to you kind of what that means as we move forward. So Mr. Ryan's going to drive for me here. First slide, you passed a budget that we're in right now that has expenses of $45.9 million. Now, it is worth noting, and there are some idiosyncrasies to this budget and last year's budget, and maybe to some extent next year's budget. The federal government has not been shy about giving away COVID relief money. In fact, you've received 4 separate pots of it. By far the biggest one is what is called the ARP, or American Rescue Plan, COVID relief money. This budget includes almost $4 million in COVID relief money. And notice I'm under expenditures here. So those expenses include things like summer school programs, after school programs, things specifically targeted at learning loss that may have occurred in students due to COVID. That's a good thing. Okay, that's where you want to spend that money. If students lost because we were disrupted due to COVID, it's good that the federal government has given us an opportunity to do that. And of course, the principals are working on a number of those things. It also includes some other things, which I'll point out as we go here. It does include $44.1 million in revenues, which, by the way, include these same revenues. These expenditures are also included in the revenue. You will notice, if you can do math in your head very quickly, that roughly $1.8 million is budgeted to expenditures which are not matched by revenues. So that is problematic. You have a projected fund balance as of June 30, 2023, the end of the fiscal year, of about $5.6 million. I guarantee you it will be higher than that, and I'll try to point out why as we go. But of that, 1.2 million is set aside for the VOTEC capital project. Okay, so keep in mind the 5.5, once the capital project money is paid, it will be more like 4.4, but then like I said, it'll be higher than that because you will not fully realize all the expenditures, not only in the year we're in, but the year that's unaudited. So those 2 years kind of compound in that regard. Go ahead, Mr. Ryan. Okay, so you have a bond fund. And by the way, I'm going to jump around here a little bit just to give you some facts. And I will email you this report tomorrow, so you all have it. We can even, if you want, Mr. Ryan, maybe we post this on the website tomorrow too, so the public can see it. You have a bond that you obtained in 2021. And that bond was for $9.32 million. And when you got it, it was set aside for various things. One thing was this Liberty Valley Primary School capital project that you're working on. Another thing is the Hvac project. Now, what we have discovered here in the last week, and you just saw on the previous slide that some of this money is to go to Hvac. In fact, you cannot use your other fund balance, or what's called your investment fund, to pay Hvac. PDE, Pennsylvania Department of Education, will not let you do that. So it's either got to come out of this or your general fund. You've already spent 10% of that money. You are to pay the Hvac's capital project cost at $4.3 million. You've already paid 10% of that, but 90% is still to come. So, almost, well, $2.7 million. And then but also the money out of the other fund. $1.98 million is still to be spent. You just heard Mr. Burkich talk about how there's going to be pay apps coming. That is where that money will come from. $2.7 million to Hvac, and $515,000 you've allocated to spend for the land right across the road here that the plan is to do athletic fields. So given all of that, please understand that roughly $1,050,000 would be left over in this bond fund to do whatever capital improvements to those athletic fields that you want, if you take the money for Hvac that was on the last slide and spend it out of the general fund. If you don't do that, it comes out of here, and that would dramatically lessen the amount you have for athletic fields. So you have a decision to make, and that is, where do we take the money for Hvac? Because it essentially will come down to how much do you want for athletic fields, how intricate do you want those to be? Again, that's a decision you can make later. I'm just lining it up for you. Go ahead. Okay, Esser. Esser are a term for your COVID relief funds. And I mentioned earlier that there were 4 of those. 2 have already been expended. Those were expended last year and the year before. So there's basically 2 left. Now, oh, by the way, there's going to be good news here, and there's going to be bad news here. There is a fund called the Esser 7% Set Aside. This is a separate fund provided by the federal government. It has to be spent by September 30, 2024. So in other words, this fiscal year and next fiscal year you have available, and then it can leak over a little bit into the following year. The total grant was for a little over $269,000. It is to be spent on these good things that need to be done to help kids, learning loss, summer school, after school programs, and you have frankly spent very little of that. As of a couple of days ago, you still have available in this fund $255,000. So this is money, obviously, we can direct towards the principals and programs they'll develop for learning loss for kids. That's good news. Next slide. There is then a separate fund called the ARP, again, American Rescue Plan, Esser Fund, of which, and this is by far the largest pot of money you received, $3.46 million was the total grant. When the school district put in their application for use of this funds, and this was done, a year ago, 20% was set aside for learning loss. In other words, the exact same things that were in the other fund. So in addition to the 200 and some thousand that was available there, 692 was available here, of which 270 is still available. Good news. So you have over $500,000 available in both the current year's budget and potentially next year's budget to address learning loss in students. That's, of course, it's a good thing. You identify kids in need and we can provide them help. Again, when you did the application, 80% was put in for what the federal government referred to as lost revenue. And the gist of this is, okay, because of COVID, your tax revenues maybe weren't what they should have been. Therefore, you can use some of this fund to replace those revenues. Now, that's great if you're disciplined. Because the thing is, this money's here for now. Once it's gone, you now have to make it up yourself. So $2.77 million is 80% of that. You've already spent 1.5 million of that last year and are budgeted to spend 1.4 million of it this year. Here's the problem. That includes in your current budget $1.15 million for 11 positions. Only one of them has been communicated to you as temporary. The other 10 are positions that you would consider to be long-term. So once that money is gone, that 1.15 million, and by the way, it will be soon, you're going to have to figure out a way to fund those positions. So quick summary, you passed a budget with a $1.8 million deficit, and that includes a $1.15 million expenditure for 11 positions. You're roughly $3 million to where you need to catch up.
I don't recall that ever being communicated to us in any way, shape, or form when we were looking at the budgetary numbers and discussing, at least since I've been on the board. And that seems like a pretty big deal to me, that you would spend 1.15 million that you can't make up without raising taxes or doing something else otherwise, to create essentially 10 positions which have reoccurring costs.
Which is why I wanted to put my eyes on it early and give you this information as soon as I could.
Can I make the assumption?
Yes.
That this does not also include all other contracted increases we're going to incur?
Correct.
Any inflationary costs that we're going to assume through purchase of supplies?
Correct.
So the 3 million is probably a low-end figure, as it appears to be right now.
Correct.
So when we were told that there was a $2 million deficit, right? Because that's what we were told surrounding finances, that was not true.
2.2.
It's going to be significantly larger than that.
It was true at that time.
But it was dependent on funds that was known to be transitory.
That's correct.
That's
So it may have been technically true at the time,
right,
but it isn't true in the spirit
no.
of what it actually means to make a budget and to understand financial responsibility.
So I'm trying to bring you up to speed as to where we are and what we need to be looking at.
So how is this not significant malfeasance?
Well, I'm looking forward, so.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Matthias,
Yeah.
I am not unfamiliar with this. First thing, I think accusing people that are not here anymore, that cannot defend themselves, is not fair to begin with. Let's not. I am pretty much familiar with many of these numbers. I don't remember exactly when they were, but when we talk about why we're raising taxes, we have discussed most of these things. And we said, if we don't catch up now, we're going to be having a lot of trouble moving forward.
So I have a lot more detail to go, and I think I can support kind of everybody's position.
Yeah.
I wanted to show you what I see when I look at this, and then you can take that and move it forward. Now, by the way, what I just told, by the way, that's why it's in red, bad news. The slight good news here is there is still some unspent money out of this 80% pot, $565,000, which can be put in your 23-24 budget as lost revenue. So what that means is that hit that cliff, if you will, does not happen immediately. It transitions over 2 years. It half happens next year and then half the year after, if that makes sense.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Ryan, go ahead. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some graphs coming up here just to give you a sense of how I look at these things. Since 2014-15, and I went back 9 years, I pulled out every audit that you've done since then, your property tax revenues have gone up an average of 1.7% per year. Your earned income tax revenues have gone up an average, by the way, this is an average over 9 years, 3.1% per year. That should not surprise you. In the Danville Area School District, you have a lot of capacity for earned income and therefore earned income tax. Your total revenues, now this is taking out those one-time funds because those of course would skew it, have gone up about 2.6% per year for 9 years, but your total expenditures have gone up an average of 4.8% per year for 9 years. That should jump out at you, by the way. Next slide. Okay, now here's kind of how I do this. I mentioned to you that it's a little early, and the reason it's a little early is when you look at my graphs, these last two are not audited numbers, okay? This one we should know in about 2 months or so. This one is the budget we're in right now, and of course you see this gap, which Dr. Green was referring to. The red line are your revenues. From here back, it's actual. So these are your annual actual revenues. The blue line is your expenditures. The green line is your fund balance, or your savings account, if you will. You'll notice in the last year it is projected to drop. You've heard me say it probably won't drop that much, or as much as it's showing, I mean. But you will see that over time it has dropped. And if it's in the 4.4 million range, like, you know, it could be, that's like 10% of your budget. Now, you can have a philosophical discussion on what you think it ought to be. I'm always a big fan of it should be at least 2 months of your budget, which is around 16% of your budget. That would be about 10%. And oh, by the way, every year your expenditures go up. So if you're looking at 16, 17% of it, it should gradually go up over time. What I look for here, and these, the blue and the red line, are how are they trending relative to each other. Like in this case, you want the blue line to be higher than the red line, and for about 3-4 years now, it's been right on. The other thing you want is the slope of the lines to be headed in a direction that's good for you. In other words, you don't want the red line steeper than the blue line, but if you look at the budget here, that's what happened. So we have to be alert to that. Go ahead.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
The 2021 bond fund.
Yep.
And the capital project fund.
Yes.
How do they interact or not interact?
They are not included in this. They're independent.
The capital project fund that has money in it, where did that come from?
Okay, I'm sorry. There are two funds. The bond fund is
They're
not
separate.
here. The capital project fund is this.
Right.
That's what that is.
Capital project, and I'm even
It's
with
the
glasses,
green.
I can't see.
It's the green line.
And what's the number at the?
Well, it's projected to be at about 5.6.
That's the capital project and the fund balance combined, or?
Because practically all of your fund balance is invested.
That's what I'm asking.
In capital projects.
Got it, okay.
Now, there's a little that isn't, 600, 700,000.
And that's unassigned?
That's correct.
Okay, that was
Correct.
my question, okay. Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is your district revenue over those same 9 years. The blue line is local, the red line is state, and the green line is federal. Two things should jump out at you. One is when you look at state and go from here to here, what does the line, that's over 5 years, by the way, what does the line do?
Flat.
Practically nothing. Flat is the right answer. Down here, this is federal revenue. What does the line do? Goes up dramatically in the COVID years.
Correct.
Well, fine, thank you, federal government, except what's going to happen to this line pretty soon. It's going to go back down. Okay, next slide, please. This is showing a very similar thing, just using bar graphs. The blue is local, the red is state, and the green is federal, and you see what is happening. And by the way, a conclusion pretty quickly is you are becoming dependent, with risk to that, on federal money. Go ahead.
But it's federal money we know for a fact will go away.
Yes. Yes.
Unless they pass another relief act, which is unlikely at this point.
I agree, I agree. Okay, now this is, by the way, I was a math teacher, and I know I didn't show this to you, but every time you look at my graphs, the scale always starts at 0. If you ever see a graph where the scale doesn't start at 0, throw it away. Okay? My graphs start at 0. Now this is a percentage, so this is the percentage of your revenue. Blue is local, red is state, and green is federal. Not surprising, federal goes up, but what you should be concerned about is what's happening to the blue line. Next slide, please. Okay, so you have this thing, property taxes. Everybody, weighs into you with their property taxes. And what you will see is a gradual uptick in property tax revenue. Keep in mind the two numbers that aren't that reliable are the last two. So if I were doing your budget, knowing only what I know right now, I would draw a trend line out here somewhere. Okay? Now, you actually have some effect on property taxes because that's something that you can pass a millage rate, but you can see that that has actually not gone up dramatically over time. Go ahead. Earned income tax is a little steeper slope, and again, should not surprise you. There's a couple of things that shouldn't surprise you. One is it's a little steeper. The other one is there's a dip right here. What happened right here? COVID. That is 2020 and 2021. So your earned income tax dropped. Again, shouldn't surprise you. Hopefully, getting back to normal means that these two numbers are in fact accurate, because again, if I were doing this for you, what I'd do is draw a trend line. And this looks pretty close to a trend line. So I'm pretty good there. Mr. Ryan. Okay, now this one's important to me, and I think this is one that gets neglected all the time. You pass a budget. And everybody thinks, oh, that's the final answer, that's it. Nope, it isn't. Because in Pennsylvania, what you pass is not necessarily what actually happens. What is more important to you financially is your actual. So in this case, you will notice that the blue line is the actual and the red line is the budget. This is revenue. So what you want to have happen is the blue line be slightly higher than the red line. That's, by the way, what is called conservative budgeting, when you project a little bit less in revenue than what actually comes in. Now, when I look at that, that's probably pretty good. I was always a fan of 2%. Okay, that's less than that, but still it's fairly conservative. This last year, we'll see. We don't know yet what that will be. Actually, the last 2 years. Go ahead, Mr. Ryan. Now, this is actually the most important graph to me. This is expenditures, budget to actual. Blue is the actual line, red is the budget line. Here I was hard and fast 2%. Like, I wanted you to pass a budget that showed 2% more in expenditures than what would actually happen. In other words, it would have a cushion in it, okay? And oh, by the way, when somebody says, oh, you got to cut the budget, don't cut the cushion, because when you cut the cushion, you didn't cut anything. All you did was cut some numbers, okay? So, be alert to that. So when I look at this, what I want is a roughly 2% gap between the red line and the blue line. And for a while you were getting that, but you see recently what's happened. Now again, last 2 years, don't know yet because they haven't actually happened. But if I'm advising you on how to build a budget, it would be that have your people that are putting this together always estimate a little high. That's what we call conservative budgeting. Next. Okay, just some more facts coming up here. Your property taxes are not as simple as they could be. School districts that are in only one county, it's actually quite simple. They take the assessed value that comes from the assessor's office and you multiply it by a millage rate that you pass, and there are your tax bills. And you can estimate pretty closely what your property tax will be. There's a collection rate that's not always 100%, but you have a pretty good guess of what it will be. Here it is more complicated because you are in both Montour and Northumberland counties, and there's this kind of complex system that needs to happen where the county courthouse gives you a factor of how much the assessed value varies from the market value. Remember, your tax is based on the assessed value. And you then have to divide to get the adjusted assessed value, and that's what the millage rate then gets applied to. And the problem you have is you have two variables. You have an assessed value that actually goes down while your millage rate goes up, and you're trying to target a revenue source. So it's a little complicated. I just wanted to pass that along because sometimes there's a question about, well, how come my millage rate goes down? I actually question that as well. Well, it's because the assessed value also fluctuates. So you have two variables going on. If you want more specifics, we can talk. We can set up an appointment and talk later. It's really exciting. Next. Okay. Another item you should be alert to is a concept called market value aid ratio. Now, I put the whole description here so you can kind of read it on your own. This is a calculation that the state does, and there's a couple of different variations to it. But what it is, now we're talking market value aid ratio. So this is talking about your property market values. What this does, it's a calculation the state does that essentially gives you a sense of the wealth of your district. Now, by the way, in a little bit, I'll also show you one that's called personal income aid ratio. So that's it's property values is one, and personal incomes is the other. The richest school districts in the state have a market value aid ratio of 0.1 something. And the poorest school districts in the state have 0.8 something. Okay? So go ahead, next slide. Your market value aid ratio is right here, 0.3885, which means when you look at the market value of this school district, you are considered one of the richer school districts in terms of market value in the Commonwealth. And I'll give you precise numbers in a minute. Again, I wanted to give you these numbers. These are the most recently available numbers provided by the Department of Education. Your market value in your school district is about $1.6 billion. Your personal income is $647 million. Now, what is WADM? WADM is weighted average daily membership. So you know what average daily membership, it's how many kids come to school and how do you average it out. Weighted means that kids in the secondary school get an additional weight, and that is because going to secondary school costs more money. Why is that? Shop, band, art class, all kinds of things that cost more money than what you need at the elementary school. So this is a number that matters. It's not an actual number. Keep in mind it's weighted. So your WADM is 2,747. Now, here's a number that does matter. This is your market value, in other words, the value of your property, per WADM. So there is $588,000 of property value in your school district per average daily membership. The market value aid ratio is important. We'll come back to that, 0.3885. That is low, meaning they consider your market value pretty wealthy. Your personal income aid ratio is a number that takes the personal income and compares it across the state. Yours is 0.4128. Keep in mind, the lower the number, the richer the school district. And your personal income per WADM. So in this school district, you have $235,000 earned per weighted average daily membership in the school district. And then, I don't know if it's the last slide, but it kind of summarizes this. Go ahead, Jeff. So there are 500 school districts in Pennsylvania. Where does Danville fall? Your market value aid ratio is the 85th lowest. So you are one of the top 20% richest school districts in Pennsylvania when it comes to market value. If you consider the 100th to be the 20th, you're in the top 20% of richest school districts in Pennsylvania in terms of market value. Okay, well, what about personal income? You're the 83rd lowest. So you're even considered richer when it comes to personal income. You are the 418th lowest personal income per WADM. So that is basically how much are you spending of the personal income for your average daily membership. You rank 418th out of 500 schools. You are the 88th lowest market value aid ratio in Pennsylvania. You are the 413th lowest market value per WADM. Pennsylvania also does a calculation called equalized mills. Now they have to do this because every county has a different assessment system. Okay, so you can't compare counties. So what the state does is they equalize that using this system. You rank, your millage rate ranks 426th out of 500 in Pennsylvania. Yet, and here's a very interesting statistic, you spend $26,000 per student, which ranks 37th. So if I look at this number and I look at this number, a conclusion is you spend a lot of money per kid and you don't tax very much. Next slide. So, what do we need to do next? We need to update our analysis after we get the 21-22 audit. I told you at the beginning, and I absolutely mean this is incomplete at this point until it kind of see the trend of last year, because that could be good news, okay, which changes my analysis. We clearly have to take a deeper dive into expenditures. I've just given you the cloud level view, not gotten into any real specifics at all, and I know that. We do have to look at things like staffing versus your enrollment. By the way, stay tuned. You will see something like that a week from now. You clearly have an overemphasis on one-time federal funds. What I would suggest to you as you look forward is you think long-term. You've heard me highlight some things that I think you need to pay attention to. And I would always suggest to school boards that you've got to think out 5-10 years. These are not things you can solve in a year, and it's hard to do. I get it, it's hard to do, especially for elected school board members, because you're looking at a fairly short term and so forth. So you tend to think, well, how can I fix something right now? And what I would suggest is the school district really needs to, in kind of everything you do, think long-term and have that long-term plan that we can stick to. And then the other thing I would point out is capital projects, calm down. Calm down. We've got to fix these other issues before we start to, now you have some money for things like fields, but what I wouldn't be doing is starting to talk about what's the next capital project, because we're in my opinion, not anywhere close to that. You are about $42 million in debt. I didn't put that on a slide, but you are. So I would want to make sure these other things are taken care of first. My final statement, and I'll answer any questions you have, is you are selecting a new superintendent, you have a brand new business administrator, you have administrators over there that I've shared all of this with. This is a process that needs to have a team approach and a long-term approach. The leader of this process needs to be the person that sits in this chair, leading that team to bring you with them with a policy and a vision for the future. I would strongly urge, as you look for someone to sit in this chair, that they can do these things you're asking, they can take leadership in these things. The person that sits over here is not in charge of the budget. They are a person who puts in data and does analysis and makes sure everything stays in line, but the leader of the process has to be this person right here. Okay, I'm done.
I just want to make sure I understand. And I'm sorry, Johannes, if you don't like this.
No, it's not.
Okay,
go ahead.
We were told essentially that there was going to be a $2 million deficit or so. What we're actually looking at is around a $4 million deficit, yes?
Three.
So at least $1 million more than was represented. And an overdependence on one-time funds, in which we've created 11 positions which we'll have to continue to fund. Yes? No?
We didn't create. We kind of ate them up with the one-time funds.
So we have 11 positions that were paid for by one-time funds that have no way to continue paying for them unless we either run a continued deficit or find money somewhere else, correct?
In 2 years, yes.
And so none of this has really been represented to us. This is the first time I'm hearing any of this.
I'm just a guy sitting here.
I understand that. And that strikes me as a fairly significant thing, because the long-term consequences of something like that happening, which to me is a failure of leadership, is that we are either going to have to let people go in order to balance the budget, or we're going to have to significantly raise taxes, or we're going to have to find other ways to cut costs in ways that are going to be unpleasant for everyone. And that really worries me and hurts me.
It's all that it's working together and getting that all. I think it's a little bit of all of that.
So, Mr. Matthias.
Yes.
Sandy, I'm okay with your opinions. I don't appreciate this accusation of failed leadership and
It was misrepresented to the board. I'm not going to let it go.
What was
No.
It was
Misrepresented
misrepresented
was
to the
it?
board.
I didn't,
No.
you know why I didn't hear this? Because I attempted to sit in on a finance committee meeting and I was told it created a quorum. I couldn't stay. Then I asked the next month and I was told it doesn't create a quorum. That's why I didn't hear it, because you were told that, and you asked me to leave in May because you said it created a quorum by me sitting in a finance committee meeting where you heard this. We did not. I agree with Dr. Green. We weren't aware of this.
No, it's
I'm
not.
certainly not shocked by it, because I've been in this field for a long time, and I remember the Obama stimulus plan.
Yes.
Districts did the same thing. And this is solvable. We'll work our way through it.
So
But we should have been told.
I do not
But this has
know.
significant long-term consequences.
Absolutely.
So,
And these are long-term consequences that could have been avoided if the board as a whole had had a better understanding that the debt was far worse than what was represented to us.
So
That is
I
significantly
don't
upsetting.
understand what makes you change your mind when it's 2 million versus 3 million. The moment you realize that there's a deficit, your ears has to be up and you have to be ready to deal with that. That's how I see it. It doesn't matter whether 3 or 2. No, it doesn't matter in terms of how I make my decision. Well, let me finish, Sandy, okay? So the other thing is this thing was communicated several times over. We know there was a deficit. We have talked about the fund balance. We have talked about how we had to raise it to 18%. If I may repeat some of the numbers, not repeat, but some of the numbers we have. One is Pennsylvania is one of the lowest states to give budget to schools. So we depend, about 65% of our budget comes from local, okay? So tax increase and decrease, this makes enormous difference here. We know that, we have said that I don't know when it was that it was presented, but Bobby Eli here sitting down and presenting this, she may not have said it in a different chart, she has presented it in numbers. But she has said exact same thing, and what you say is what she said over and over and over. Said either we had to cut, we had to do something, or we had to increase taxes, and then we made decisions not to go up to 4%. I'm not done yet here. So the other part of the, I don't understand what it means to say it's malfeasance. I don't, I lose appetite when such words are used. Let's be factual and let's say this is how we understood what's missing here, because I understand most of this. Okay, the other thing is our school budget, 73 or so % of it is for staffing, just student, teacher salary, all kinds of packages, okay? So a slight increase, which is coming, right? We had to start negotiating this. We know it's coming. It's not something that we did not know. We knew there's some deal coming up with school teachers as well as the teaching assistants. We knew something is coming up. It's not something that's totally surprising. I don't think we should act like that. I don't know what part of this is that I know that you don't know.
I sat in this seat and I asked them directly why we had the budget deficit and what thought process had been made in order to deal with it. And I received no satisfactory answer at the time. I asked about it, and to find out it was even worse than what was being represented to me, to my face. I asked how much it was. I was told around $2 million. It's not $2 million. It's more than $2 million. And now we have 11 positions which we do not currently have a way to pay for. We're paying for it with temporary funds. So when those funds run out at the end of the year, that's an additional amount of money. We need to figure out how to continue to maintain those teachers' positions. So the teachers or staff or whoever it is. And I don't want to be in the position where I have to look at people's positions and say, I'm sorry, because someone made a decision to use temporary funds to hire you in what was supposed to be a permanent position. I now don't have an adequate way to pay for it. And that is a misrepresentation to me. I asked direct questions, and I did not receive direct answers.
You did get an answer. I don't know if you know. I think it's, you mind if I?
1 minute, and then Sandy, 1 minute.
Okay. So we were told, this is something that's been said again repeatedly, that we did not raise taxes for 6, 7 years, I don't know, I don't remember exactly, in a row, that we're falling behind over time. We were falling behind over time. When your budget, 60-something or 64 or 63% of your budget is local, and you fail to raise taxes, and you start to depend on state and federal budgets, it's something that the board has to decide to raise taxes. That's the only way you have. Okay, thank you.
I just want to know if you were ever told that there was a $3 million gap and that you were hiring 11 people with temporary money. I just want to know if that was ever said anywhere.
Honestly, what I remember is somewhere $2+ million.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was.
We were told $2 million.
But
what are we trying to accomplish?
How
What is the goal
does
of
it
this
bend-
argument? We have facts.
Yeah.
We could break down and argue till whatever kind of a position you want to take on it. There is a lot of decisions got made. The people that were supporting those decisions that were transparent, available for months, are not here to completely defend them. So to pull one piece of the puzzle out and throw it in the public forum and lean on it is irresponsible.
And also,
Okay?
how does it help?
I don't agree. I have to go out there and explain to people who are going to ask me questions about now why I have to raise taxes more than I said I would. I have to go out and answer to people who may or may not have a job because we don't have the money to pay for it. And if I sat here and asked questions and it wasn't represented me, I ask questions. I ask questions in multiple ways.
Dr. Green, I'm totally with you. We
You're
need to be asking
behaving
more
very-
That's the
questions.
point.
You're
More
behaving
questions,
very
not less.
differently than you did a few months ago, to be honest. You justify not to raise taxes. It's not like you don't want to raise taxes for $2 million, but now it's $3 million. You want to raise taxes? How is that different?
No, I wanted the information to make the
No.
decision.
You're acting
not that
differently than you
simple.
did a few months ago.
We've raised taxes 3 of the last 4 years, 18, 19, 20, 21, and then this year.
Almost 5 years it wasn't raised. And that's why you got behind so far.
We raised them this year.
Yeah.
You raised them last
And they
year,
wouldn't give me what I wanted
3%. We
anyway.
raised them the last year I was on the board.
I think the best.
So I get back to a simple point. What are we going to accomplish as a team to argue this? Tell me where the value is to continue to beat up something that we have obviously a difference of opinion. Obviously, it stokes emotion. Those people aren't here to have that conversation. We are here to make a difference and change the future. If you want to have those kind of conversations, I don't feel it's productive right now. We get it out of our system, fine. That's facts. Let's deal with the facts.
Happy to.
So I got to interject a little something here, and I don't mean to offend you, Doc, but I'm not cutting nobody's position. I'll dance up
I
and down
agree.
this table like an ape before I cut a
It's a
single
pretty far
person.
leap just to say, because suddenly there's something that wasn't clear to you, that now people are getting fired.
I asked the question about it. It wasn't
You
answered.
were given an answer. There was no tax for
Excuse me,
many
fellas,
years. We need to raise taxes.
let me just finish my comment here, okay? There's ways to do this. This is a budget. This isn't anything that's unconquerable. There may be positions that we don't fill through attrition or something like that, but I don't want to get anybody in this school district antsy. We are not cutting anybody's job. It's just not going to happen. No way. Not as long as I sit up here. I will do everything I possibly can. That's not going to happen.
Is that something we collectively agree on? That furloughs are off the table moving forward? $3 million is a lot of money. I don't want to furlough anybody's job. I was a superintendent for 13 years. We never cut anybody's job.
So are you guys ready to
$3 million
raise taxes
is a
that
lot
you
of
refuse to
positions.
raise? I think the next option is, are we gonna raise taxes? Okay, so.
I think I'm sorry, but I think it's going to take a majority of strategies. You're not going to do it, you're not going to tax your way out of it, and you're not going to cut your way out of it. It's going to be a collective strategy, and it's going to be complicated, and it's not going to be something we just come out and boom, we fixed it. Because it's not going to be 3.
And it can't happen in
Right,
1 year.
absolutely, and I agree
Maybe
with
more.
Wayne, that's a great point, because here's the other part of that story. We can beat that up, and with all due respect, fine, let's put that, we still have $2 million deficit. So whether we talk and beat that up till whatever, we still have a deficit. So we can scream and holler about $1 million, which is fine. What about the $2 million? So either way, we have work to do that we've got to take what's ahead of us and figure out how to get to where we need to be.
I'm going to say good news, not directed at anybody. You don't know this yet, but my assumption is last year we're going to come in better than we budgeted. My assumption is this year, because, Harry, I'm glad you're doing this for what you're doing it for, but we're not paying a full-time superintendent, we're not paying a business manager, we're not paying a director of curriculum, that this year is going to come in better as well. But.
It almost always does.
Yes.
Because of the concept of conservative budget.
Right, yeah.
That's why I keep saying we have to make sure we have the most recent information and get that, that audit number in there for last year, and then we can better define some trends.
And I don't blame anybody for this, and I'm still in the positive tone here. During COVID, the EIT losses probably hit Danville more. I don't have the actual numbers, but Danville generally goes up more than other districts in EIT. That would be something that I wouldn't feel that anybody should have to answer for. Hopefully, that's going to change going forward because we're out of COVID. People are getting raises again, we hope. They're back to work. That looks better as well. So there's some good news, I think, going forward, but it's a challenge. Harry, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I wanted to give you facts, and I wanted to give them to you as early as I possibly could, so that you have a chance to reflect and think and, make some decisions on where you want to go. The easiest thing for me would have been to not do this. But I felt it was important for you to see and know, and so here it is.
Another thing I'd like to add too, just for people to keep this in the back of their heads, that Danville being one of the richest school districts in the county, to me, it's a misconception because of the beast, what I call the beast on the hill. Okay, your average incomes up there are significantly higher than anyone else in this district. So it's not, they're not going to notice 4% of money they make. It's not the case. It might be true for the beast on the hill, but for the rest of the population, it's not so. So I just want to be careful. We have to do other things besides tax our way out of it. I was elected as a representative of everybody here, and I don't want to put pressure on the guys that don't make that kind of money either, where 4% is a big difference. So just keep that in the back of your head.
I want to reiterate what we said because nobody really responded. To me, furloughs are off the table.
Yes.
It's not even a possibility.
I agree.
Too many other ways to do this.
That's what scares me.
Yeah.
That's what really scares
Me
me.
too. Other than
Because
that, we'll fix it.
It's
That's out. To me, that's out. Can't happen.
But nobody's suggesting that. Nobody's suggesting
He's
that.
the one who suggested that.
No. So
Nobody's
you're not
suggesting that.
listening to what I'm saying. You've created 11 positions without having a way to sustain those currently on one-time purchases. That is a big deal. And I don't know how you can't see that. I mean, it's not just that it's $1 million more than we were told, because it is. It's that you also have 11 positions which there was no thought process in how you're going to pay for those at all. Because they're all done with one-time funds.
You don't know that. Have you looked at attrition? Have you asked the people that were involved?
This was what we were just told. It literally is the facts you're so interested in.
Easy.
No. So
Easy.
you can be kind to me, I'll be kind to you. I've been respectful. I've always been respectful to you, even when we've
I
disagreed.
didn't need that snide remark, okay?
Like you're not making snide remarks here. I mean, seriously.
Sandy, you're acting like you are, suddenly you woke up and didn't know anything about anything, and this was
No, I'm
discussed
angry because I
after-
asked questions about this because I was worried about this.
Why
And I did not receive straight answers.
You are receiving
I asked
straight
questions
answers, for
in email,
heaven's
I
sake.
asked questions here in public. You can go back and watch the questions I've asked. You can literally see it in public record that I've asked questions about this, and I was not told. And then I had someone sit up there and essentially say, oh, you guys are all the problem, not us. So guess what? This is an example of the problem that existed before these administrators went away. And now we're learning it's even worse than we were originally told. I don't have to put up with that. And I don't have to meet the decorum you think I should in this context. I was not treated with such decorum. So you may disagree with me. That's fine. But I'm going to advocate for the things that I think are right. And one of the things I think is right is actually having an honest presentation about the budget and all the academic stuff that we're doing for the best of the kids and the teachers, which is what I'm trying to advocate for, because I don't want those 11 people that we hired to go away because we can't figure out a way to pay for it. And I also don't want to screw my public with giantly raising their taxes if I can help it. It's clear that we're going to have to do something, but I'm responsible to them, I'm responsible to the teachers, I'm responsible to my students. And I was misled. It's not that I didn't ask questions, I asked questions. You can go back and watch me ask questions. I did it very deliberately, and I was essentially lied to. So, that's why I'm upset, because it's not only $1 million more than I was told it was, but there are 11 positions which we do not currently have the money for because we use temporary money. Now, you guys can disagree with me all you want, but I asked these questions, and I was not given answers. And I asked thoughtfully and respectfully. So you guys may not like it, but this is the actual truth here.
Well, I'm impressed by the way you act like you were not told about anything and you're not described. I told you, you can't go back and, so let me finish. What Bobby Ely presented, that was one of many presentations that she had. I don't know if you attended anything before you became a board member, but hold on.
This is why
hold
I
on.
asked you if
gave
you were
3
ever
minutes.
told it was $3 million.
Sandy, please. So, acting like you don't know and suddenly you're taken by surprise, I don't buy that. We were every one of us was there. One of the last presentations she had, she described it. Okay, you're willing to listen now. You were not willing to listen last time. Does not mean it's not presented. You all say I was not given an adequate answer. That's totally incorrect. And the minimum, have some respect for Bobby. The business manager was a very honest and very smart person.
I don't
Okay,
think the
so
business
you act like you I'm lied to and all those things. I don't know why you try to be so emotional about it.
I don't fault the business manager at all.
Yeah,
I don't fault the business
No,
manager either.
so she presented that. So I mean, if she did not tell you, what do you mean she did not tell me? She presented exact same thing with just different type of numbers in terms of different presentation. Okay.
We got to move on, guys.
Go ahead.
We got to move on.
Don't accuse people when they're not here. They don't. Can they defend it? Please leave them alone.
Are we moving on, or?
We're moving on.
That's
Doc.
okay. Let's
We're
move
moving
Dr.
on.
Getachew, you don't always get the last word. Move on.
Okay. Curriculum Committee. Discussion on a student from a neighboring district to attend Danville High School to participate in our entrepreneurship program pending board approval.
We have another application for an incoming student, Mr. Varhalik. Remind me where the student's coming from. Milton. Okay, so they'll be on your agenda next Monday.
Comprehensive plan meeting update.
Somebody, Mrs. Kroom isn't here tonight. Somebody remind me, she has scheduled the next meeting for?
September 28th.
There you go. Thank you. That's moved around a little, so I appreciate Mr. Brookhart's memory.
Renovation updates, Mr. Burkett?
We already got him. I apologize. I jumped ahead on him.
Can I ask a question about that briefly? I didn't want to ask it then, but about the renovation. You said we had 2 units we're waiting for at the primary school. Are you talking unit ventilators? The rooftop units.
Second shift. And getting Liberty Valley ready. And maintenance staff. To work there.
Do you know if there's a breakdown of what we spent at the primary as opposed to Liberty Valley? And if we don't have that now, is that something we could recover and provide to the board? Because it was, when it was initially approved in February, it was in a package. 2 of them were all under one figure. It wasn't broken out.
If I get my calculator out, I can get that for you.
That'd be great.
But
I don't
yes.
need it right now.
Yeah, I have it right here.
Coach's Code of Conduct for discussion.
Yes, Mr. Albertson came on board a month or so ago, and we had some conversations in my office about things he was interested in doing. And I was very supportive of an idea he had regarding a coach's code of conduct. Now, and he can answer your questions. I know you've seen it. What this becomes is not only a valuable piece of documentation to help guide your coaches and make their behavior and their approach to students consistent with your school district, but it sets the basis for their evaluations. So going forward, what you want from your personnel is an objective evaluation, measurable, observable things versus some benchmark, and what this does is creates that benchmark. So kudos to Mr. Albertson for pulling this off.
I talked to Mr. Vognitz as the head of the athletic committee. I know he is hoping to have an opportunity to talk with the committee before this. I don't see anything in it that's going to prompt anybody's concern. That's what he said. He wasn't able to make it tonight, so I'll let you deal with that with him from this point
Have
forward.
him send me his
I
questions.
will. Okay. Yeah, I don't think he knew until about an hour before. For sure he wouldn't be here.
Any other comment? Board will be updated on the progress of hiring new staff.
We do have a number of staff that have been hired have been recommended since the last meeting. When that happens, and of course school starts, Terry and I work to get them a letter that basically authorizes them. They can begin work pending board approval. You'll have a number of those. Some are paras, a few teachers. It'll be on your agenda next week. And by the way, I have an answer to Mr. Brookhart's question. Of the 4.18 million that you approved, roughly 183,000 was to the primary school. So 4 million Liberty Valley, 183,000 primary.
That includes the architect's fees, the whole. 'cause
It
that
does
was
not
broken out.
include that.
That was broken out. I saw that.
It's
That
like
was-
370,000 or so for architect's fees.
Okay.
Roughly.
And our administration has not moved into that building, which was the purpose for that project. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
Well, you heard me say a little earlier, calm down. That's going to be a discussion you have to have.
We'll have to
moving
fact on
forward.
that one, but I understand. Advice noted.
I lost my place. Did we get the new hires?
We did, yes.
Act 93 goals?
So, under your Act 93 agreement, there is a provision in there where the administrator's goals are to be approved by the board. And I've talked to you about this a few months in the past. They are now before you. I think they're in your documentation where you can see them. The way this played out is talk to each of the administrators about coming up with what is referred to as a SMART goal. Specific, measurable, attainable, results-oriented, and so forth. We had a meeting then, or they would get them to me ahead of time. We had a meeting where we discussed those. Sometimes they needed edited, or I felt they needed edited. So what I have presented to you are what has come through a conference process with me and the administrator with my recommendation, if you will.
I'll comment again. I know we're in an odd year. It happens in districts. We have an acting superintendent. We may have a superintendent in 2 months. We may have one in 8 months. We may not have one for a long time. You never know. And I certainly appreciate your expertise with this, Harry, but it'd be nice if our new superintendent also in. So anything that we do to approve, I would hope will be tentative based upon a new superintendent taking us in a different direction possibly.
Totally understood. Keep in mind, I was following the language in the agreement, which said by September.
I read it, yeah.
I didn't want to miss the deadline.
Okay.
Any other comments? Tax collector agreements?
So in the Danville School District, as you know, you have various municipalities, and under the state governmental law, each one can elect a tax collector. Well, in some cases, those tax collectors make decisions that they do not want to collect the school tax. So when that happens, what you basically do is deputize, and that's the legal word, your business administrator to collect those taxes. There's actually someone in the office, Beth Norman, who has done that for, I believe, 3 municipalities. So what this is it will be a resolution, essentially, where you are deputizing Ms. Bartholomew to be your tax collector for those particular municipalities.
HIPAA and right-to-know officer. The board will discuss approving the business manager as HIPAA and right-to-know officer.
So, by the way, Terry is getting tired of me already. I'm joking. Because I'm, as you probably noticed, very procedural. And this month you do this month you do that, this month you do that, and so forth. And I create what I've affectionately referred to as the book. And the book tells you what you're supposed to do in such and such a time. You are required to have a HIPAA officer, someone who can investigate if there's a violation of HIPAA, and a right-to-know officer. And what we're doing is we are naming Ms. Bartholomew those. That is not unusual, by the way. It was Bobby Eli before, so this simply puts her name on those positions.
Job description for administrative services coordinator.
So back in July, when the board hired Laura Reno as the administrative services coordinator, we mentioned to you at that time that the job description needed to be updated, that there were some tweaks as to what we wanted her to do versus what the position was. This is simply an update to that job description to better fit what she's doing.
Extracurricular stipends.
One of the things that I believe needs to be done on a regular basis is that the board needs to approve when people get paid. That's kind of fundamental, okay? So you have, and by the way, of course, you have teachers and support staff and administrators and so forth. You also have coaches, and then separate from that is this group called extracurricular. And there are positions in each building. Most of them are in the high school, but there's also a bunch middle school and even some down into the primary school, you know, the music director, things like that. So this is a stipend that you give to someone above and beyond. In the past, this is, well, I don't want to talk about the past. What I'm proposing we do is have before you at the next meeting a list of the extracurriculars, positions, what they get paid, and who it is. You vote to approve it, and then the business office then knows who gets paid, how much, for what.
Why wouldn't we have done that previously?
Why don't we want to talk about what's happened in the past?
So, this is the issue that I brought before you, that this was adjusted, but it was adjusted in such a way where some positions got more and some positions actually got less.
Without board approval, correct?
That's correct.
Well, it hasn't come to us yet, so.
So
Eric,
I
can ask
corrected
you
that.
A
sure.
real quick question, this may be off track, I'm not sure. Do we have coaches on multi-year contracts in 1 year? Is that encompassed in this, or is that a separate thing?
It's a separate thing.
Okay.
And, oh, by the way, something that.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm in favor or opposed, I'm just kind of curious how that works.
Going forward, now, then that occurs because those positions are not in any other contract.
Right.
So you're given the latitude to approve them however you wish.
It doesn't really get me there, but I appreciate it.
Go ahead. You can move
Some
on.
are multiple years, some are not, and it's however
But
they're.
how they get there, we don't know.
Yeah.
All right, I got it. Communication plan.
So a number of the administrators and staff have been working on a communication plan. Mr. Varhala kind of led the effort here to bring it to me, and so if you have any questions, he's probably the best person to ask.
Is this going to be up for approval next?
Yes.
So once again, seeing as how this is something near and dear to my heart, and that I brought before the board earlier, I think it's probably important that whoever the super is has some say in this as well. And so I guess the question is, if we were to pass it coming up, what effect does that have on the way that the super is going to influence and or change this?
So that would be up for you to work with them. It's not like something that's, hey, it's in place for 5 years.
Sure.
If you'd want to sit there and go, hey, we'd like some revisions to this, you just work it out.
So wouldn't it make sense to wait until we actually have the super in place to?
That's your call.
To consider this? I mean, it seems like something that's rather important. It's nice. I looked it over. I want to commend everyone who's worked on it. Looks like you guys did a really nice job. But it seems to make sense to me that.
So we could not play, if 5 board members are on the same page, keep in mind, we don't have to table anything because this isn't an official meeting. If 5 board members don't want this on the agenda, it doesn't need to be on the agenda.
I mean, we could approve it pending the arrival of the next superintendent, and then,
Do that, you can put it on the agenda and table it, or you can. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I see. I appreciate that.
I'd like to. Out the coaches to say, this is what I'm using, it's stuff that would probably,
So it's useful to you, even if it gets revised at a later date.
and I wanted it to be a work document. That's
Okay, so I appreciate that. If that's your perspective on it, and it's helpful to you guys, I remove any sort of objection that I have, at least
I
in
think
the
it
short term.
looks,
Thank you.
I had looked at it, not in great detail, but it really, very well done, so commend you, it looks really nice. A couple things I didn't anticipate, and they're good, like the letterhead piece, it's very nice.
And I do appreciate you were thoughtful about it, including the things that were put forward.
Yeah, it was all.
I can't take credit for creating that document. It was the communication expert who created that document for me. So.
any other discussion? E-grant signature resolution?
This is simply a resolution that allows me to sign e-grants. We were thinking for a while that my tenure would not be long enough to do that, but there's some major grants coming up, so this just puts me on as someone who can sign for you for grant applications.
Health and Wellness Committee.
That one's not me.
I don't currently have anything to report. I don't think we've met, at least from my perspective. It's something that we should
Can I have a quick question on that?
actually do.
I don't even know if it's health and wellness. I don't know if I'm opening a can of worms. I certainly hope not. The health and safety plan that we approved in August, 5 of us came in.
Yes.
Back in like January, February, the superintendent was given authorization to make adjustments to that, to be timely with things that happened with COVID. We came in, the board made those changes. Going forward, hopefully we never get into that situation again. If we ever need to take any action, who does that and how? I wasn't on the board then.
So the most recent revisions were made based on those CDC guidance.
Right, which have been relaxed.
Correct. So, and that's the right word. I'm
Right.
glad you used that word. So it seems to me if there needs to be adjustments, it would be more in the stricter side than more relaxed. And it seems to me that's a greater
Comes as the
conversation.
board, not the person sitting here.
I think so. That's the way I would interpret
All right.
that. That's a board decision.
I'm fine either way, I just would like to know. That's all.
Yeah, and part of that, the logic behind that was, in the beginning when that was kind of put in place, there was so much unknown, and it became a little bit of a pragmatic side to say, like, how do you manage this in a day-to-day, week-to-week setting, and do we have to reconvene every time? And so some of that logic of getting the framework together, follow, the guidelines from the CDC, that kind of thing, and then putting the burden on the superintendent to be able to navigate that and keep people informed.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Touches on that.
Yeah, I know it was, pandemic was, I was a superintendent for 10 months of it, and it was horrible, the whole thing, but the 10 months I had were the easier months, when really the cases were low, and I didn't deal with it a lot, so just kind of curious how you're discerning those things, but that makes sense. Okay.
Any other comments? Health insurance report?
What I would add here was the Stanville School District has 3 seats on the CS Trust Board. 2 of them were previously occupied by Bobby Eli and by Mrs. Cooper. Now, Mrs. Cooper's indicated she doesn't want to be involved anymore. Of course, Bobby Eli is not here anymore. So at the next board meeting, we would like to have a resolution to name Ms. Bartholomew on the administrative seat and Mr. Brookhart, who previously had volunteered to do the board seat. So
Somebody else would like to have it, they're certainly welcome. I'll do it if need be.
Need be.
Okay, that's fine.
And you have a 3rd seat, that's a teacher, and that is Shelley Craig, who has agreed to continue doing it.
Board concerns and items for next meeting agenda.
Can I just acknowledge something? So the middle schoolers and the high schoolers had a cross-country meet, and the middle school girls swept all 5 top slots, including your daughter. And so I want to say congratulations to them. The boys didn't fare quite as well, but they still did very well. They took 3 out of the top 5 slots, and so they did great today at the middle school cross-country meet.
2 things real quickly. This may be already be in place. I know a lot of local schools are doing things for military, first responders, that type of thing, recognizing them. They did at Bloom, and I think they did something at Line Mountain. Are we planning anything like that here? Is that already in place, or is it something we can discuss at some point?
I don't know if the principals are doing anything.
Okay.
And right after that, kind of funny you mention it, I got
Yeah.
because being the official, the uniforms that they give you
Yeah.
are illegal.
Well, you can't see the numbers.
But-
I know that.
So as of right now, no, they did mention something to Coach Brennan that possibly next year
Yeah,
they might
okay.
want to come here.
Right.
But I have to address with them, they give those jerseys to the teams
Yeah.
and then collect them after the game.
Okay.
We are going to do Friday night is that's for pediatric cancer. We're doing a game for that.
Good.
For the Southern game, we are doing that has to do with teen suicide awareness. For both of those games, there's going to be tables set up.
Southern's here?
Southern is here.
Oh, good, it was here last year, that's good.
And so we're doing things for those two games. Some parents reached out to me, and I said, absolutely. We'll figure out where to put those tables. And it's yellow for this week, and I forget what the color is for for the suicide awareness.
Okay, great, thank you, appreciate it. And tennis, can we get a quick update on what's going on with that, coaching and the whole bit?
Mr. Brookhart's question had to do with the tennis coach, so we were not able to, well, do you want to, Mr. Albertson, do you want to speak to it?
So Mr. Varholic said he would step up and be our contingency coach. He did that after multiple phone calls, emails. We emailed, Jeremy and I emailed various colleges. We had it finally in the paper, which was a mistake before I got hired, that it was not in. But we reached out to the Williamsport Tennis Club, Susquehanna University, Bloomsburg University. I reached out to the Sunbury Y, or not the Sunbury Y, the Milton Y and the Lewisburg Y, who does tennis lessons. We reached out to all of them with no response.
Yeah.
I did have some response from people who were willing to volunteer, but they could not commit.
Right.
Those people are in place right now with all their clearances and everything, but Mr. Varholic has stepped up, and he might have the highest winning percentage of any coach in the district right now. So things are going well. So
3-2.
So
that-
Okay.
you did table that, so that means it will be back on the agenda for your approval.
Yeah, I'm hoping, we're not looking anymore. I hope you just finish the season at this point. It'd be disruptive for the kids. It's not ideal, but I think it's best, but that's your call.
Laura Spar, who was a volunteer coach last year, helping out. Bobby's like the figurehead, she's like the person on the staff. But things are going well right now, the girls are playing well, and we're moving forward.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Wagner just wants to recognize that the Danville Choir from the middle school is participating in the 9/11 ceremony on Sunday.
I have a couple other things. Next Monday, you are prepared to, or please be prepared to fill the vacant board seat vacated by Mr. Kroll. Tomorrow is the deadline for applications. Once the deadline passes, Terry and I, which means Terry, will get to you the applications of the applicants. The plan is that we will have them here a little early. We'll meet them over in the library, and we'll do it right at the beginning of the meeting. Who our applicants are, bring them in, and we'll have a question or two that Mike can ask, and we will give you their application ahead of time. You can judge the answers, and then at some point you make a motion. What we were planning on doing is much like we do on our internal interviews, give you a ranking list where you rank order who the candidates are. Terry compiles those, reports those back to you, and then you use that for a discussion. You don't have to use it for your motion, but if you have a person who's clearly the top ranked candidate, that could help you. Somebody makes a motion, a second, there's discussion, and under section 315 of the school code, it requires a majority vote of the board. So to name someone to the school board requires at least 5 votes. So that's happening next Monday. Also, I have submitted the school safety and mental health grant. That was submitted. It's $130,000-ish in each grant to cover for 2 years. School safety, we're looking at several physical things that we're trying to do. And Ken, of course, has been in the loop giving me questions on all of that. And it also includes the grant I have submitted and a 3rd school police officer. And just because of how the school is made up with Liberty Valley out there and the middle school down there and primary and high school here, we felt that a 3rd school police officer would be an important asset for the district. Keep in mind, this is not a long-term position. It's funded for the length of the grant.
Thank you.
And then under mental health, we are actually meeting tomorrow, a mental health provider directly for our students, provided by CMSU. That's the main core of that money. We are looking to put together a committee made up of parents to weigh in on mental health and other issues. And then also, we are providing some seed money for Geisinger to do a mental health program that they are getting off the ground. So that has been submitted. And then finally, a suggestion. We did this thing that could help save time. You will recall at the last meeting when we had pay apps for the project, and then also when we hired people, we sat here and listened to Mr. Clauser read every exhibit, okay? And then you voted. He'd read one and then you vote. And then you'd read another and then you'd vote. And read another and then you'd vote. And coincidentally, each of the votes was 9-0. So he read 10 things, there were 90 votes, and all of them were yes. Well, what we did at Central was under the particular areas, and not the whole agenda, but under the areas, we would do what we called a consolidated agenda. So what Mr. Clauser would say is, does any board member want to pull out any of those exhibits? And every board member has the right to do that. You could say, you know what, that fourth one there, I'd like to vote on separately, so you'd pull it out. Okay, anybody can do that. But then what he would say is, okay, do I have a motion to approve all the other items? Do I have a second? Discussion? Vote. You vote once on the consolidated items rather than have him read every single one of them. Well, last month he read every single one.
And in the beginning.
Right.
But what he's suggesting is, say we have 10 new hires
Oh,
under
yeah,
personnel.
okay.
We
Okay.
can
Yep,
combine
yep.
those new hires.
You don't have to vote
Or
10
whatever.
times, you only have to vote
Yeah.
one time.
Okay.
Now, it's your call.
Unless the board-
You don't have to do it.
Right, unless the board wants you to break something down.
Right.
Any board member has the right to do that. I think it would streamline your voting process, but far be it for me to tell you what to do.
I would give the consent.
I am, because then if you're okay.
I
with it-
second.
What we would do is build the agenda that way.
Unless you just like being here longer.
So this is something that we had to vote on to modify, right? It's not something that we had to agree and proceed, or?
What I'm asking, do you want to do it that way?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we should do it.
And then we'll build the agenda that way.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it if well, obviously it's your meeting, right? If you're opposed to it, then we won't
We're
do
gonna
it.
object to it.
But it could streamline.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I had. Thank you.
Can I just put one more thing for the board's consideration? We're having significant trouble with busing. And can we just, at some point, as a group, discuss, I'm concerned that fuel costs may make a significant adverse effect on the ability to get kids to school. Just looking at my own costs, they're up exponentially. And yes, that could have been negotiated in the contract, but no one could have foreseen the current economic environment and the current things going on. And it may do us some degree of good to think deeply about that as a board, to try to retain as many of the drivers and companies as possible so we can continue to get people. And so that it may be worth just us discussing whether or not there are options.
So, two points on that. The first point is, it does the Danville School District and its students and its parents no good if a bus contractor goes bankrupt.
Correct.
Does them no good. In fact, it does harm.
That's where I'm thinking from. Not that I want to spend additional money, especially in light of what we were told today, but I think I have significant concerns about the fiscal solvency at the current rate that people are going to have to spend money to bus our kids, which is very important.
Second point is, there are local school districts that have put in their bus contract a clause that has to do with the price of fuel, and it's based on an index, a nationally published index that tracks the cost of gas and diesel. And so there is a methodology out there. If it's okay with the board, I will research that and get back to you.
I think that'd be great to have it as a discussion item.
I'd like to see it, definitely, yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Harry, you mentioned a police officer being hired short-term. Could define short-term for me.
For the length of the grant, so in this case, it would be 2 years.
Just 2 years.
So at the end of 2 years, can we let's let somebody go?
Yes.
Because I think we need one in each building.
I'm doing this with money I have available.
Well, I don't know how much the grant is, how hard it'll stretch. I don't have those figures. I got
So here's how I built that into the grant. Fair question. So you have a contract with your police officers. It's so much per hour, so many hours, so many days. I mean, you already have that. So what I did is I looked at that and used those exact numbers, and that's what I built into the grant. So I didn't inflate it or deflate it.
There would be no more grants coming down the pike. We don't know that.
We don't know that. This grant, again, good question, is specifically from the state government for school safety and mental health. Now, this is interesting because this is the first time I shouldn't say it that way. This is a clear effort on the part of the General Assembly and the governor to recognize the importance of school safety and mental health. Whether that dissipates in 2 years is probably unlikely,
I doubt it.
but
We don't know that.
in the short term, it's for the amount of time the funding's available.
I guess I'd like to suggest to the board that, I mean, we have, and I hate to say this in public, there's 2 police officers that we have now. They can't be everywhere at once. It's a virtual impossibility, so I would really like to find a way to keep one full-time, beyond 2 years.
I agree with the idea of one in every building. I know we have significant financial challenges, and it's going to take a collective effort to do it. And we have some significant disagreements on some things going backward, but going forward, you know, we're going to have to get a plan together and a vision for the district. But safety is a non-negotiable.
I agree. I mean, completely.
Bulletproof vest to drive.
I'll crowdsource.
Is there any way that we can get, like, I don't even know how our guys are equipped.
I can have a
far as
report
our
done.
police
We can
officers.
do a report, sure. Now, but here's a, oh, by the way, and this is just in my head circling around.
I really hate it when you say that.
As you know, the Sunshine Act calls for certain provisions on things that can be done in executive session. School safety and security, to some extent, is one of those.
Okay.
And the reason for that is you don't want to say in public provisions that you're using to keep your kids and staff safe. So let me think about that, but it could be that I set that presentation up for executive session.
Yes, sir.
Am I making sense?
Yep. What I heard was we're having an executive session on Monday.
Maybe.
Any other comment? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? I guess we don't have to do that, do we?
No, you just have to hit
I
the
don't have to do
gavel.
that, but it was fun anyway.
Oh, well then,
Just tell us all to
see
get
you on
out.
Monday.
Hey.
Thank you for phone.
I got you. No, I get it.
Hey, I did ask you where the
I knew
What's
it
that?
I did ask you
before I
for
ever
the
got
back
here.
door. Huh?
Okay, he'll be
He's
up
running
there.
every direction.
Oh, okay, I got you. I'm right here.
Oh, hi, it's nice meeting you. This is my first day for everything here today, yes. My first day on the job, my first day in the meetings. Yeah. They have, everyone has been wonderful. Very.